we would like to welcome you to Combating CSE, a solution-based approach presented by the Protect Arizona Children Coalition. My name is Lisa Fink, and I am the president of the Protect Arizona Children Coalition. Today, we are going to be talking about sex education. But first, I'd like to tell you a little bit about the Protect Arizona Children Coalition. We work to protect the health and innocence of children. We are also for parental rights. Parents, not the government, not the schools, possess the fundamental constitutional rights to direct the upbringing and education of their children. Our efforts are to protect those rights. Sex education is no longer the birds and the bees. Well-funded national and international organizations like Planned Parenthood have been pushing what they call comprehensive sexuality education, also known as CSE. Comprehensive sexuality education is much more than sex ed. It is designed to change the sexual and gender norms of society. By raising the rising generation in radical gender ideologies, it promotes high-risk sexual behaviors to children and encourages even the youngest of children to experiment sexually while ignoring the research showing negative outcomes for sexually active children. To show you how serious they are about changing society, the Sexuality Information Education Council of the United States, or SIECUS, founded by Planned Parenthood Medical Director, promotes CSE as a powerful vehicle for social change. As you can see, prominently displayed in their logo is the phrase, sex ed for social change. Planned Parenthood, the nation's largest abortion provider, is also pushing comprehensive sexuality education in our public school classrooms. They are the single largest provider of comprehensive sexuality education in the United States. And so what does Planned Parenthood teach? Monica Klein was a sex education educator for Planned Parenthood for over 10 years. She explains how CSE sexualizes children at this time.
So part of comprehensive sex education and risk reduction is to also teach them how pleasurable it is to use these types of things, condoms and lubrication. And it also means that we need to role play different ways that you can talk to your partner and convince them to use condoms and lubrication. And we're also taught that when we see a sea of people and teenagers, assume that they're doing everything. Don't ask them what they're doing, just assume that they're already doing it, which would include vaginal, anal, and oral sex. So we are to speak candidly to those teenagers about all forms of sex and how condoms and lubrication can help them, giving them a false message that they're going to be protected. I wasn't comfortable with doing this, and so, but I was being taught by my leaders in the community, these experts at Planned Parenthood, that this was the only way. But there was no way that we could convince people not to have sex. There was no way we were going to convince children and adults not to have sex. So we just have to give them the resources, even if their parents don't want them to have it. Because what they told me is parents are a barrier to service. Once the parents know that this is happening, we'll never see them in the clinic again.
As Monica Klein explained, CSE sexualizes children rather than encouraging sexual delay. CSE normalizes high-risk behavior. CSE programs teach children to consent to sex. Contrary to what some people think, teaching consent is not about teaching how to say yes or no. It is really only about how to say yes to sex. Planned Parenthood teaches that consent is an agreement to participate in sexual activity. In many states, including the state of Arizona, it is illegal for a minor under the age of 18 to consent to sex. It is a felony in the state of Arizona. CSE programs also undermine parental rights. Here is an example from Reducing the Risk, found in multiple Arizona school districts. It states, you don't need a parent's permission to get birth control at a clinic. No one needs to know that you're going to a clinic. A question parents might ask is this legal? I find it interesting that the school nurse cannot give your child an aspirin without your permission, but it doesn't seem to matter when it comes to birth control. CSE programs promote gender confusion. The biggest change to sex education today is that it's now saturated with the LGBTQ sexuality. Marriage, sex gender, and sexuality are the subject of profound debate in the culture and the courts. Yet, many school districts have effectively chosen sides on these issues and are using sex education as the vehicle to enforce conformity with their views. Remember, CSE's new brand is Sex Ed for Social Change. Lessons can be highly manipulative, carefully designed to get children to approve of the concept of sexual rights and fluid sexual identities, and to reject their religious beliefs, the authority of their parents, and even physical reality itself. And these lessons are being taught to our children today. Some districts have created their own CSE programs that are just as harmful. This is an excerpt from the Tucson Unified School District High School lesson number 4. It teaches students that their sex, gender identity, gender expression, and sexual orientation are all fluid or on a spectrum. Then they ask the students to plot themselves on the identity continuum. This is not medically or scientifically accurate and plants seeds of doubt and confusion in the minds of impressionable students. According to DSM-5, as many as 98% of gender-confused youth accept their biological sex after naturally passing through puberty. Unfortunately, that fact is not mentioned in the CSE curriculum. I find it interesting that Planned Parenthood is the largest provider of comprehensive sexuality education, and these CSE programs are pushing transgender ideology. And now, Planned Parenthood is one of the largest providers of transgender hormone therapy in the country. The good news is that you are the first line of defense between these harmful messages and your children. According to the National Campaign to Prevent Teen Pregnancy, teenagers reported that the person who influenced them the most in their decision about having sex were parents. Parents need to talk to their children about this topic, and not about the graphic things, but about their expectations. Your sons and daughters want to hear from you, even if they don't act like it. So here are ways you can combat CSE in your community. Know your parental rights, educate yourself, advocate for healthy curriculum, and be an informed voter. Parents, not the school or the government, possess a fundamental constitutional right to direct the upbringing and education of their children. Every Arizona parent should be aware of the extensive parental rights they have that are protected in state law, and their ability to freely exercise them. In public schools, parents can access and review any material, which includes books, videos, and any other item used for instruction. Parents can opt out of material that parents would deem harmful or questions beliefs or practices in sex, morality, and religion. Parents across the country and around the world are exercising their rights and pulling their children out of school. In the UK, a school suspended their LGBT lessons after 80% of the students were kept home from school by parents. The UK is also banning doctors from prescribing puberty blockers and cross-sex hormones to children who are younger than 18 years old. That would be wise for us here in Arizona to do as well. In Arizona, districts do not have to teach sex ed. Sex education is not mandatory. But if schools do teach it, they must notify parents in advance and must obtain written parental permission for children to participate in sex education. They cannot teach your child formal sex education without your written consent. You have the right to, and we strongly recommend, that you view all of the materials before you give written permission. Do not go by the outline that the school provides about the subject being taught. We have seen transgender ideology hidden in a lesson on hygiene. Parents, you need to be aware that these topics are being taught in other subjects like language arts, history, and science. According to Arizona State Statute 15-102, the school must notify parents in advance, and parents have the option to opt their child out of that instruction. If not, the child will be taught the sex ed in that particular subject. As you can see, there are several laws that protect parental rights. This is a new law that will help parents know what their rights are in the education of their child in public schools. The law requires each school district and charter school in this state to prominently post on a publicly accessible portion of its website a link to the statutory handbook of parental rights. And who does Planned Parenthood consider the greatest roadblock? Monica Klein will help us here.
And so, but I was being taught by my leaders in the community these experts at Planned Parenthood that this was the only way. But there was no way that we could convince people not to have sex. There was no way we were going to convince children and adults not to have sex. So we just have to give them the resources, even if their parents don't want them to have it. Because what they told me is parents are a barrier to service. Once the parents know that this is happening, we'll never see them in the clinic again. So we need to let them know that it's safe to come here.
So as you can see, Planned Parenthood considers parents a barrier to service. So it is important that parents and community members are educated on what is being taught and who has access to our children. Educate yourselves and examine the curriculum being used in your school district. Simply ask to see a copy or file a FOIA request. That's the Freedom of Information Act. This is how you can gain access to school curriculum. First, you can contact your school district or charter school curriculum director and make an appointment to see the curriculum being taught at your child's school. This varies per school if they allow you to review this material on-site or if it'll need to be done at the school district location. Make a records request to see the school curriculum. This is done by filing a records request form online at the school district website. Here's a sample of what can be used at the Deer Valley Unified School District to gain access to the curriculum. Fill out the records request form and submit online. Records requests are usually answered within 30 days. If they are not, follow-up emails or phone calls might need to occur to remind the school you have an outstanding request. Note, if you have follow-up questions are needed from records request response, additional emails or records requests may need to be made. Last year, Planned Parenthood opened clinics in 50 Los Angeles high schools. Beware of their goal to have a clinic in every school across the country. This is a parent who was shocked to learn is perfectly normal depicting cartoon images of people engaged in various sex acts was found in the elementary school library. Here's what she did about it.
Good evening, members of the board and Superintendent Vesely. My name is Jennifer Reynolds. I've been a parent in this district for 24 years. I'm also a taxpayer. I have 4 children who have gone through this school district. They're now all in high school and 2 of them are in college. I come to you today to discuss a book that I found in our school district. It's called It's Perfectly Normal. I drew attention to our curriculum director, Christy McDougall, about this book. I'm very concerned. There's a push in our state to have comprehensive sexuality education. This is one of the books that they are pushing. There's very graphic sexual content in this book. It doesn't promote abstinence. It promotes masturbation. It promotes same-sex relationships, and it promotes promiscuity, not abstinence, which is what is in our state statutes. I call attention to you to Title 13-3501. This is what I also gave you a copy of. No sexual explicit material to students, and it's a Class 4 felony. If you look at the copies that I gave you, you will see that this is very sexually explicit and should not be in our schools. This is currently in Cielo and also Estrella. So I, as a parent, as a taxpayer, I demand this to be removed immediately. I didn't get to my satisfaction why it was in our school libraries. I was told by Mrs. McDougall only teachers have access to this book. But this is not acceptable to me. Why is this book purchased? She couldn't tell me why it was purchased, by whom it was purchased. But why is this in our district right now? Please look at the pictures. I'm shocked just looking at them. Could you imagine our little kindergartners getting access to this book? So my question today is, I would like to have a follow-up from Mrs. McDougall or Cheryl Houston in the district, detailing the action plans on when this book is going to be removed, how it's going to be removed, and who is responsible for bringing it into the district. Because like I mentioned, it's a Class 4 felony to have sexually explicit material in front of our kids. So we should be removing this immediately. I'm in the process as well to review the sex ed that's currently in our schools. I did that when our kids were in 4th and 5th grade. The HIV and STD and the development cycles for male and female, I plan on doing that again. Due to fall break, I haven't been able to get into the district to look at that curriculum. But if this book is anyway mentioning the curriculum, again, I'm going to be coming back to this board and saying why. This is not acceptable. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Reynolds.
So after this testimony before this board of directors, those books were immediately pulled from the libraries. This is a helpful resource called Responding to the Transgender Issue. You can download your free copy at genderresourceguide.com and to help educate yourself in regards to the transgender issue. You will hear the argument that CSE is medically accurate and evidence-based. The Institute for Research and Evaluation is a nationally recognized independent research and evaluation company, researching the efficacy of school-based comprehensive sex education for over 25 years. In their 2019 report, they evaluate 60 different comprehensive sexuality education evaluation studies. They found that the CSE programs had an 87% failure rate in achieving their stated goals of decreased teen pregnancy, decreased STDs, and increased condom use. You're probably wondering if there are any good sex education alternatives to CSE. Yes, there are good sex ed alternatives. In spite of all the bad news about sex education these days, parents need to remember that currently the sex education curriculum choice is left up to the school district, which means parents and community members can advocate for healthy curriculum to be taught in school rather than CSE. There are good sex ed programs in use today. Choosing the Best and Heritage Keepers are two such examples of sexual risk avoidance curriculum that positively emphasizes delaying sex until marriage, making healthy choices, and providing medically accurate information on contraceptive failure rates. Choosing the Best is currently being taught in the Chandler Unified School District, and Heritage Keepers is a curriculum that qualifies for federal grant funds. Additional sexual risk avoidance curriculum and resources can be found at the Ascend website. So ways to combat CSE is to know your rights, educate yourself on what is being taught, and advocate for healthy curriculum, and be an informed voter. This is actual legislation that was proposed in the 2020 legislative session. Notice, if it had passed, it would have mandated CSE taught to all Arizona children starting in kindergarten. It would have emphasized LGBTQ rights and affirmative consent. Thankfully, this House bill did not pass, but I guarantee you they will try again next session. That is why it's so important to know what each candidate believes and stands for. Center for Arizona Policy provides a free voter's guide to help vet each elected official. For those of you not familiar with CAP, that is the acronym for Center for Arizona Policy, they are a nonprofit advocacy group whose mission is to promote and defend the foundational values of life, marriage, and family, and religious freedom. You can obtain a voter's guide at azvoterguide.com. After the primary, they will also have a guide for school board candidates. School board candidates are the gatekeepers for the district. Planned Parenthood aims to sexualize children by implementing CSE in every Arizona classroom. The right school board members will refuse to let that happen. Stay engaged, stay involved, and vote the whole ballot. I'm going to end where I began, with the children. The health and innocence of children are too important for us to be passive. It's time to take action. We need to engage in our own homes, and we need to engage in the community. Together, we can and will make a difference. Thank you.